Very happy today that FICI and ClearTax have associated together for this very important webinar on financial compliances for 2021, recent changes under GST implications and solutions. And ClearTax is India's leading software as a service platform for enterprises, tax experts, and taxpayers. In the mission to simplify finances, save time and money for Indian businesses and individuals, ClearTax offer cloud-based platforms on GST, e-invoicing, e-way bill, income tax, investments, and advanced taxes, and is already trusted by 60,000 tax experts and 5 lakh businesses. So in this webinar today, FICI and ClearTax webinar that we have associated together, we would be having two panel discussions, and panel one would be having discussions on tackling the issues surrounding input tax credit under GST. Basically, we would be deliberating on recent amendments governing input tax credit, challenges faced in claiming input tax credit with solutions, and power of the tax officer in implementing the provisions of the law. And we are very happy to have the panelists from various corporates who have joined us for this panel one discussion on ITC. So I'll briefly introduce all the panelists and welcome all of them for this webinar today. First panelist is Mr. Rahul Verma. He is a qualified chartered accountant and company secretary. He is senior director tax and is currently heading finance and global taxation function at Cipla Limited. And during his professional tenure, he has worked with many corporates, and he has experience in leading many corporate initiatives, restructuring and transformation projects. He has been also part of Apollo Tires Limited, Intex Technology Limited, Knit Technologies. Welcome, sir, to this webinar. We are looking forward to hear you.
Thank you, Ira.
Surmi Punshi, she's a chartered accountant with more than 8 years of experience. She spearheads indirect taxation policy at ClearTax. She specializes in all matters concerning taxation, which broadly include consultancy, compliance advisory, and training. Presently, she manages GST and e-way bill advisory and software development. Welcome, Surbi. We also have Ms. Preeti Goyal. She is Senior Manager Taxation, Hindustan Unilever Limited. Ms. Goyal is a chartered accountant having experience of more than 12 years in the field of indirect taxation. She is currently Senior Manager Indirect Tax at HUL. Previously, she has also worked with GlaxoSmithKline Consumer Healthcare Limited. Also, she worked with a pioneer law firm, Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridhar. At HUL, Preeti plays an important role towards supporting businesses for stabilization and ensuring compliance under GST laws with fast changing legal framework and optimizing overall indirect tax impact on the company. We also have, welcome Preeti, welcome to this webinar. We are looking forward to hear you.
Thank you, Ira.
We also have Mr. Rajiv Agarwal. Mr. Rajiv Agarwal is a member of FICI SMS Confederation of MSME FICI. He is also proprietor of GPPL Industries Manufacturing, mainly automobile bulbs for replacement market basis. It's a small scale unit, and he is in this business for last 30 years. He is also Senior Vice President of Industries Association of Uttarakhand and have been member of different forums of central and state government on indirect taxation and labor. He's also a member of Advisory Board of Uttarakhand and Electricity Regulatory Commission. Welcome, sir, to the webinar today.
Thank you, Ira.
Then we have Mr. Sadashiv Shenoy. He is the Head of Finance, Trade, Marketing and Distribution, ITC Limited. He's a chartered accountant by qualification and has been working with ITC Limited for over last 28 years. In ITC, he has worked in internal audit, leaf tobacco, agri-business, and India tobacco division before assuming his current responsibility. He has handled various aspects of finance function, including accounting, costing, taxation, insurance, and regulatory affairs. So, welcome, sir, to this webinar today. And
Thank you, Veera. Thank you so much.
Thank you to all the members who are hearing us live, and we're just going to start the discussion. So, over to you, Surbi. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ira, for the warm welcome. And hello and welcome to all the panelists and the viewers. Today, we are here to discuss about the financial compliance of business in 2021. And we all understand there are a lot of changes, especially when it comes to ITC. And there's a lot of confusion which is actually coming up among the business, and they actually don't know what to do. One of the example which I could think of is the confusion around should we use 2A or should we use 2B for claiming ITC. There are other things of thinking like, what about this rule 86.4? Should I actually go with it or what to do in that case? So there are a lot of issues which we think of, and is this actually legal or it is not, or what should we do next? So today in this webinar, we are going to discuss about all of such issues, and we will be understanding in deep like what exactly this particular thing means and what can we do next. So with this, I will just start the first query or question from Rajiv ji. So Rajiv ji, we understand regarding ITC availment, and the government have come up with lot of harsh rule. So do you think this harsh rule on ITC availment is something India needed at the moment? How does this actually affect the honest taxpayer?
Can't hear you, Rajiv ji. You are on mute.
Kritika, hope it was fine now. Introduction.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak first. And I'm seeing it's a very small unit, so I think my voice will matter the most because ITC, Supply, and HUL, they are very big companies. So I think what I'm going to come forward is the real problem which we are facing.
Yeah, okay.
See, one thing is very clear, that honeymoon period of GST is over. And the experience of the government has not been very good in tax collection. So there is no doubt about it that the need of the hour is to enforce provision of GST in right earnest. There is no doubt. Any GST due should go to the government, and that's how the country runs. So I can't go away from the fact that we have to see that GST goes to the government in right perspective. Now the problem which we are facing is that slowly in GST, it is the service receiver or the receiver is being penalized for every mistake which anybody is making. That is the biggest problem. Now, that is how the whole system of GST has been evolved, and any non-payment by the supplier comes to the receiver. Now, there lies the problem. So when we are talking of the solutions also, we have been advocating in different forums also, and I'll give you a live example of what was there in Uttarakhand. When that was on in Uttarakhand, we used to load the invoices received by us also as receiver. Because at present, we are taking ITC of the supplies received without giving details of against what invoices have we received the invoice, the GST, the ITC. In Uttarakhand, we used to declare those invoices also against which we received the materials. So the government has a chart or has a data to see that who is not loading invoice. Because today, if I'm claiming GST and my supplier is not loading those invoices, then government doesn't have any data, and there lies the mismatch. So I would suggest, as a matter of suggestion, that as FICCI we can send it to the government, that try and capture their data also. That is going to help in one big way. Because that is very sure that GST somehow is not going on the right track in terms of the money which is coming to the government. Now, another issue is which we have flagged at many forums is that everybody is not issuing invoices. When we see particularly at B2C levels, the invoices are not being loaded. So on one hand, the supplier is collecting the GST from the consumer, but somehow he is not making that proper use of that GST and is not paying to the government. So one thing is to make sure that the invoices are issued. Now coming to the things which do you want me to carry on with the questions which you have said, or you want me to stop here? Survey. See, there are 3 questions which have been put up to me. So I have, do I answer those questions right now, or?
Yeah, we'll take like one by one. Maybe I think first regarding the ITC availment, you clearly said that yeah, government actually need this ITC. But when it comes to like forcing the recipient to make sure that the supplier also files a return, is it actually a right thing for the supplier? Sorry,
Yeah,
not
that's
actually.
what that's what the whole thing I said. See, the burden lies on us. The burden lies on the receiver. So somewhere down the line, tax officer should also be made liable to catch hold of the person who is not making the payment. In earlier regime, this used to be the bottom line. Why the tax officers are there to collect money. Here we are being penalized, we are being hanged, everything is being done to us rather than to the receiver. So receiver is having a field day rather than being asked to pay the taxes. So somewhere down the line that there should be some changes in the tax laws to make sure that officers are doing their bit and making sure that supplier is making the payment of GST.
Yeah, Rajeev. So I think this actually answers like the government should also think of like how they can actually collect the taxes from the supplier rather than just forcing the recipient to make sure that
Exactly.
their supplier upload the documents.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
so with this, maybe I can ask the next question from Shinoy ji. So Shinoy ji, we all understand that the government have come up with lot many changes. They have made several moves to simplify the GST compliance, but still the business are not pleased. So what do you think, like, and especially when it comes to a lot of amendments, and today's the businessman, the tax practitioner itself, they are like so much confused, so much worried about this notifications which keeps on coming up. So what do you think this MSMEs actually need from the government at this moment to simplify the taxation?
Yeah. Thank you, Surbhi, for giving me this opportunity. And as Rajiv ji was rightly highlighting, holding the receiver of goods or services responsible for lapses of anybody in the supply chain is rather harsh, and that is something that the government needs to address right away. It's going to become even more harsher now with the proposed amendment amendment proposed in the budget, wherein they have very clearly mentioned that an assessee will be able to take the credit if and only if the supplier has declared those invoices as part of his GSTR1, GSTR1 returns, and those invoices appear there. Otherwise, you're not going to get the credit. So that I am sure is going to cause a lot of problem working capital side, if not a permanent P&L impact, at least working capital balance sheet impact is going to be there, because the supplier has the receiver has to go after the supplier, make him declare that in his returns, and then avail the credit, which to be very frank will be beyond the capacity of many service receivers. Some of them can, but most of them cannot. So I think the first thing government should do is relax this 100% condition that you will be able to get only if the service supplier has declared those transactions as part of your GSTR1. I think we started off somewhere around through a amendment to the rules with a 80% compliance, which meant that for about 20% of your input credit, you could claim it even if your suppliers were not regular in declaring those. From 20%, they gradually made it 10%, then to 5%, and going forward, they are making it 0. I mean, it's 100% compliance. Now, government would do well to relax this condition back to 20 or 10%, so that there is some leeway. If I'm dealing with hundreds of suppliers, some or the other person is going to default, and that should not cause problems to an honest taxpayer is my view. So I think a tolerance limit of 10 to 20% will definitely go a long way in easing that pain to some extent. And second thing that's going to happen is this matching. The way the government is envisaging is a month-to-month match. You know, if there is a sale declared by a supply declared by the supplier in a particular month, the service receiver also has to account for it in this particular month. Now, this is going to create a lot of problems because there are bound to be some timing mismatches. Now, there could be invoices raised at towards the end of the month, for example, by a supplier, which will get accounted in the next month by the service receiver. So there's bound to be a month-end mismatch. Similarly, there could be a dispute on the invoice whereby the service receiver may refuse to acknowledge the receipt of the invoice because the goods may not have been received by him. It might have been delivered to a wrong address. The quality may not be sufficient, etc. And when those problems get sorted out, then the receiver may account for it. Again, giving rise to a mismatch in time horizon. And so therefore, there is a little bit of flexibility that is required as far as the time horizon is concerned. And for the years 17, 18, 18, 19, even 19, 20, many suppliers have made mistakes in filing the returns. You know, it could be a simple mistake like an invoice number has been put wrongly, or the date could have been put wrongly, etc. As long as there is no tax implication, I think government should give a window of a one-time window of opportunity to all the SSCs to make those corrections, you know, so that there is a better match between the records of the supplier and the receiver. And the government would also do well, you know, to stop amending the rules and issuing new circulars so frequently. I think they should have an agenda by where all the changes in rules are published once a year. And once it is published, because many of these changes that the government incorporates, it involves an extensive change in the IT systems also. You know, the bigger companies will have to do changes to their own internal IT systems. The smaller companies will depend on, you know, the generic solutions which many service providers provide. So we need time for these system providers also to make those changes, because GST is now heavily IT dependent. Gone are the days where, you know, you could publish a circular today and from tomorrow it will become effective. In GST, it just can't work like that. So one, reduction of frequency rather increase the frequency to once a year only, not more than that. And give a 6 months window for any change to be effective. I think these steps must be taken by the government to make life easier for all the SSCs, especially the MSMEs.
Thank you, Shinarji. And we actually understand, like in budget, they have come up with the changes in section 16, where they have actually introduced this condition that supplier should actually upload the invoice in G1, and then only you will be able to claim the ITC. And but we also understand about rule 36(4), which is already there, and they have reduced this limit. Now it's like 5%, but it may say, maybe it may come up okay, now you're just making this limit as 0% and you're not giving any relaxation to this recipient to claim ITC. And we also understand there are other things like QRMP scheme, where we might have certain quarterly supplier and who are not going to upload the document on monthly basis despite having this IFF facility. So they may say, okay, I'm going to, anyhow I have the right, I can file the return on quarterly basis. Still, I'm not going to upload on monthly basis because I don't have any penalty on this. So it's not like if I don't file IFF, then government is going to charge me something. So this is actually going to make the person who are going to file return on monthly basis, their life little harsh, because they then have to make sure like, okay, now my suppliers, they are not filing, I have to force them, okay, just file it, otherwise I'm not going to give you the tax amount as a payment. So this may actually create another problem in respect of claiming ITC. So with this, maybe because we are just talking about these rules, we are talking about all of the ITC eligibility. So, Preeti ji, I would like to understand from you, especially when we talk about ITC eligibility, it is governed by Section 16, Section 17, then there are Rule 42, 43, then there is 86A, and there are like GST 2A, 2B reconciliation, and now even the government have introduced this Rule 86B in a bid to just avoid this fake invoices and scams. Shouldn't be there any easy way for doing the business now? Like how would the normal common man will be able to run business when there are lot many rules, lot many restrictions when it comes to claiming ITC?
Yeah, Subi. I think if I talk about as a concern from a taxpayer, obviously there are so many rules and regulations which they have provided, and you have so many reconciliation. But if we see that with time, government is actually trying to leave no stone unturned to ensure that whatever digitized system which they originally formulated becomes operative in some way or other. So initially they thought of GSTR 1, 2, and then 3, and now what they're trying to do is whatever they could not bring in full form, now they're trying to bring it in piecemeal. And that's where now this two-way full reconciliation, 100% credit matching with two-way has come in the law, where they have taken away that facility of 10%, 20%, what they provided initially. So if you see, as far as this appearance of the new compliance system, which is there now, including our e-invoicing implementation, which has happened, and now this GST two-way reconciliation, it really speaks about the intent of the government to achieve the objective of digitized tax administration and compliance. So their idea is to ensure there is end-to-end connectivity and visibility to the taxpayers, and compliances are automated and technology driven. That's what they're trying to do, and that seems to be a fair objective from the government perspective. But if we look at from a taxpayer's perspective, it is definitely adding difficulties. So you highlighted one big concern, I think, which nobody is right now clear, when to use GSTR 2A and when to use GSTR 2B. I still could not understand what was the logic of bringing 2B when 2A was already there and you could see all your invoices appearing in 2A. Then you have this issue of small taxpayers who are on quarterly return filing. They may or may not opt for IFF facility. So if they don't upload their invoices, you don't see it in your 2A, and hence you are getting stuck with the working capital. And it's not only about the people who are not uploading the invoices. Even when they are uploading invoices, there are vendors and there are suppliers where you might find some hygiene issues also. And it's such a trivial issue when you see from an industry perspective. Somebody might have uploaded an invoice with a wrong number. He might not have uploaded one last digit of the number, one slash, hash, etc. Should be missing. And when you use any automated technology to do the matching, it throws it away as an error. So practically, even though he has uploaded the invoice, he has paid tax on that invoice, you end up getting stuck with that reconciliation issue. Then sometimes, and I think the bigger difficulty, what is today there, like when they initially brought in this concept of matching, there was a mechanism you can accept or reject a particular invoice which your vendor has uploaded. So if you see he has not uploaded the invoice correctly because he has used a wrong GST number, he has used wrong place of supply, etc., you could reject the invoice on the portal itself, and a communication automatically goes to the vendor, and he can see it and take the corrective action. But today, though they have brought in this mechanism, there is no such mechanism whereby I can automatically communicate to my vendor. So you have to set up a lot of compliance desks where you are regularly calling the vendors, chasing them and asking them to do the correction, etc. There's a lot of energy and time which is going in the follow-up with the vendors. So I think that obviously because the intent is good and that's what is the ultimate objective or the ultimate goal where we want to achieve. I think two, three things which I can think of which can be done to basically help industry to cope with this change. So first, I feel is that initially they thought of a single return system, which they never implemented because they brought in changes in the current legislation itself, where there was a facility that you can upload the invoices which your vendor has not uploaded. So whatever he has uploaded, you can take credit. Whatever he has not uploaded, you can upload those invoices, take credit, and there was a time limit given of say 2 months within which you have to go back to your vendor, ensure that he uploads it. So that way, the concern which Mr. Rajiv Agarwal was raising, that today government has no mechanism to see which are the invoices which your supplier has not uploaded, because the ultimate idea is to collect tax from him. So if that sort of a mechanism is provided where you are allowed the flexibility to take credit on your own invoices by uploading it on a portal, then two objectives are getting solved. One, you are able to take credit on those invoices which you have recorded in your purchase register. Secondly, government is also getting a visibility of those invoices which supplier has not uploaded. And if they want to go back to him and catch hold of him to ensure tax payment, that objective can also be achieved. So I think that might be one thought process which can be think through. Second, I believe now, since e-invoicing is being made mandatory, now they have brought in for 100 crores also, and now Revenue Secretary were talking about 5 crores also. So, though it will take some time, but the moment e-invoicing become fully operational, then because all your invoices will get reflected in GSTR1, and from there it will automatically flow to your GSTR 2A. So, all these reconciliation issues will start getting down. So maybe industry would expect government to defer this provision of 100% matching till the time this e-invoicing provision is made fully applicable, so that you are not struggling in terms of reconciling, because then there is an automated system from the government itself where you're able to ensure that whatever tax supplies he has made, those are getting reflected. So I think these two, three things which government may think through if they really want to ensure this compliance. Otherwise, as Mr. Sadashiv highlighted, we have working capital issue, we have bandwidth issue, all these reconciliation, etc. Definitely, it's putting industry and especially for the small people, because for the big organizations, you can definitely have technology driven solution, because it's such a mammoth task. You can't think of doing it manually. But for small taxpayers, definitely it's a matter of concern where a lot of resources they have to put on this compliance.
Thank you, Preeti. And I think, yeah, this is right now, especially when it comes to MSME or SME. So for them, it is like actually a lot of concern, because they have to make sure if they're dealing with some vendors who are not filing the returns and all, they may end up like losing the ITC. And if they end up losing the ITC, it can actually impact their working capital too. And they anyhow work on a small margin. And if their ITC is gone, it's like their margin is also gone. So that will be like a lot of bigger problem for the small companies. So I guess Rajiv ji want to say something. I could see he just raised the hand. So Rajiv ji, do you want to add something on this point? So Rajiv ji, I think you are on mute.
Came about whether 2A is sacrosanct or 2B. So I just want to tell the audience that 2B is now the thing, because that gets frozen and we have to file return according to 2B only, ITC matching. Because 2A is real time, today is something, tomorrow is something else. So we have to go by 2B, that's very clear. See, one thing is like about the supply, the receiver, the person from whom you buy things. Somebody told me, and I really take it well, when you look for a groom for your daughter, you are very careful. So likewise, when you choose your supplier, you have to be very careful. You must choose the right person at the right time and take the right decision at the right time, because otherwise you keep repenting. So you have to be very careful about choosing your supplier. Now, regarding this thing about other questions which are there, about 86B, can I say something about it?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. 86B is something which I somehow personally not feel is something meant to hurt most of the people, because anybody who's an honest taxpayer is paying tax in cash, and it's mainly for fly-by-night operators of fake invoices. So anybody who is into inverted duty structure is having a problem, because in any case his working capital is getting blocked, and it's further getting blocked because of the 1% thing. Now, I believe there is an option of going to the commissioner and seeking an exemption of a particular person, particular SSE. So I think somehow 86B is something which doesn't hurt most of the people, and particularly not the honest taxpayers. And here we are discussing about the issues which the honest taxpayers are facing. So I think most of these issues coming out of 86B are not there. Now, regarding the third point about maintaining the records. Now, I'm telling you my personal experience. What we have done in our establishment is we go strictly by what has been declared in 2B. So when we take the ITC, we put that into ITC receivable, and when we avail the ITC, we debit the ITC receivable, and whatever is the balance ITC left for a particular month, that should match with invoices which have not been loaded by the supplier. So that way, month to month, though it's a problem, as Preeti was saying, that yes, monthly matching is a difficult thing, but yes, we have to follow the law, and we have to make sure that we have systems which take care of the issues which arise out of following the law. So that is what we have been doing it, and we are pretty successful in doing the matching. The only thing remains is that yes, it is resulting in cash flow problems when the supply does not load, because in quarterly filing of system they have given the option of IFF, invoice furnishing facility, but most of the people don't know or are not doing it. So as a result, we are having that cash issue problems, and I think most of the industries must be having that problem. So as was suggested by the panelists, that we should request the government to go back to the 20% thing, because ultimately this gives us some leeway, because we are going to take benefit of invoices which have come to us. There is ITC available on the material that has been received by us, and the invoice has come to us. So once that is done, as Preeti was saying, that the earlier option of loading the invoices which have not been loaded by the supplier, we should go back to that, because then there's a data available on the system, and the tax officers can go back to the person who has not filed those invoices and seek clarification, rather than forcing us to not forego our ITC. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv ji. And I think this is very important for everyone to understand, and also for the government to understand, to just relook into some of the provisions which are there. We all understand that their intention is very clear, that they want to remove these fake invoices. They just want to punish only the person who are actually making problem into the system. But just because of these rules and this changes which they're coming up with, sometimes even the honest taxpayer are suffering because of this. So they just have to look into something, so that at least the people, they don't face any problem with their normal business. So I guess Preeti ji, as she mentioned about why can't we just have the earlier system which we have introduced in July 2017, which was 1, 2, 3B and all. So I would like to understand from Rahul ji, what is his opinion, and what do you think about this reintroduction of GST at 2A, and the same thing like 1, 2, 3 and then 1A, 2A and all. So what do you think, will this actually help this ITC reconciliation process?
Yeah, definitely. It will help from the industry side, because the thing is, what's happening is the way this whole, while I'm a big fan of Modi and Modi government and the way the policy development is happening. But having said that, I think the Modi government has made it very clear in their first, government, which has happened 7, 8 years back, that they want to make the entire tax system as non-adversarial. So they want to make it whole thing working in a self-sustaining way without any much of interference from the government side, right? So the moment you try to put lot many things on the government, they are going to make laws which are going to put it back in the in the code of the industry to handle it themselves. So that's where I think they are working on the maximum governance and minimum government. I don't know. Probably with this kind of a thing, they would also be reducing the number of babus that they are sitting in the corridors, and probably I think we will see the cost is going to reduce of those babus, and that kind of benefit will flowing into the industry by way of a lower tax rate. But having said that, when it comes to 2A or 2B, right now we are just filing GST tier 1, and we are having 2B by way of supplier filing us, and then 2A and 2Bs. So that way the fight is still half. Like you're fighting only battle with on one leg, and that is good enough. If we fight with 2B, with obviously which will be in the favor of industry. If I have made purchases, if I have got invoices, if I have got all the GST paid invoices, I would be filing in my GST 2, and let the government find it out who has not paid the GST. That way, it will only increase the burden for the government, which they don't want. So I don't see anything of that sort which will increase the burden on the part of the government. They are going to introduce anything like that. So yeah. So having said that, the burden is there. So to say, while there are legitimate laws and legal pronouncement by the Supreme Court, and earlier VAT and service tax regime or excise regime as well, where the people who has defrauded, they were liable, not the people who has innocently bought the material. Having said that, the regime of law making has been such, so all those laws which is favoring the honest taxpayer has been clearly kind of taken out of the books by way of clearly framing the laws that way. So that way, that is the order of the day, and probably the large part of the governance and compliance, putting the industry on the right path of compliance is now put onto the industry. And when we talk of industry, it is the industry forums like FICCI, and obviously the large taxpayers like the Nifty 50 companies, or Nifty 100 companies, or BSE companies. So these are the one who has to set the industry right in terms of while doing good things using technology inside their office, in their processes, at the same time helping their vendors to kind of come up the curve as expected by the government. So yeah, while that has been the motto behind the government, making all the tax managers of the large company as their commissioners, and kind of collecting taxes, and put the house in order. But having said that, there's a large role to play, and obviously, if the GST 2 comes into play, obviously, it will be kind of put the ball back and in the government court, and probably we'll be able to fight our battle better, and at the same time protecting our credits in a much efficient manner. And in that case, obviously, this 20%, 5%, 10%, whatever we are talking of, won't apply, because whatever I have, I shall be uploading, and nobody can dispute it until unless somebody really kind of find out that someone has uploaded a fake invoice. So this is my submission on this.
Thank you, Rawalji. And I think this also explains, because when we just look into, okay, that was one part, like what government exactly want. But still, like when we talk about GST 2A and 2B, and as Rajiv ji also mentioned, like 2B is now the new return. But or we can talk about 2Bs for us, like that we should look into. But still, when we look into practicality, it's like 2B that is generated only on 14th. And if it is generated on 14th, then let's say if I am a taxpayer, I have to file my GST 3B on 20th. So I am just left with like 6 days where I'm reconciling all of this thing and then making sure I'm claiming ITC in my GST 3B. So that would again be a bigger challenge. And then they will be like, okay, let me then go ahead, just reconcile basis my 2A, because it's more of a real time. And since we also understand that there is e-invoicing into picture, so the invoices would be uploaded in 2A on the real time basis. So they may say, okay, better I just reconcile in 2A and ask my supplier beforehand, rather than just waiting for my 2B to be generated. Why can't I just reconcile with my 2A, and then make sure if certain invoices are missing, I can keep on asking my supplier, hey, please upload it, so that I can see that invoices in my 2B. So that could be like another approach which may be taken by the businesses to just deal with whatever is in our hand and what is there in the act, and also complying with the law, and at the same time following up with the vendors and making sure that they are not missing out on the ITC part. So that is what we can do if we just look into 2A, 2B and the other system. I think Rajiv ji want to say something. So Rajiv ji, you are on mute.
I want to highlight in this forum, and I'd ask Ida to include that as a questionnaire. This is about recent changes in e-waybill. As MSMEs, we are facing a lot of problems of these changes which have come from 200 to 200 kilometers. If somebody has to send any consignment up to 1,000 kilometers, he used to get 10 days earlier, which has now come to 5 days. And as you understand, these MSMEs generally, particularly small industries, send their consignment in part load, and they move through logistic companies. And logistic companies don't operate point to point. They go from one point to their hub, and then from the hub, they go to different points. And unless they have a full truck ready, they can't send it to another point. So this 3 days, 4 days become virtually impossible for these consignments to reach the destination in time. And the sword is always hanging on the supplier, because if the e-waybill is expired and some officer catches hold of any consignment moving with expired e-waybill, the supplier is penalized. So I would use this forum to please advocate to the government that they should go back to this 100 to 200, particularly for up to 1,000 kilometers, because beyond 5,000 kilometers is not such a problem. But less than, say if it is 300 kilometers, I'll take an example from Dehradun to Bareilly is 320 kilometers. It takes 2 days e-waybill. Now how it moves is from here it goes to Ambala, from Ambala it goes to Noida, from Noida it goes to Bareilly. So there are 2 transshipments, and by no stretch of imagination it can reach the destination in 2 days. So I asked Ida to just include this in discussion, and I put my point across that this e-waybill thing is causing a lot of problems, and we have to really have a sleepless nights in making sure that consignment is reaching the destination in time. At times, we have to bifurcate the consignment, bring it down to less than the minimum requirement so that it reaches, particularly for small industries. So I've just put my point across. If you can take it forward and take it to the right forum. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rajiv ji, and I think we should definitely take this forward. And with this, maybe I would just ask Shinoy ji, regarding the ITC, because we are talking about ITC. So we all also understand that there is a limit for claiming the ITC. So there is a time period for claiming ITC. So let's say if I just talk about, there are certain purchase invoice which just get missed from an while I was just claiming ITC and I just missed it. But while I was doing audit, I come to know, okay, this is the total ITC I should be able to claim. But the time I come to know that there is a deadline, like I should be able to claim only till the September, next year September return period, or maybe annual return, whichever is like earlier. So the time period is also lapsed. Like, what do you actually think government should actually put such restriction, or they should just remove this? Because anyhow, when we talk about ITC, it's the right of the customer to claim. So what are your thoughts on this? Shinoy ji, you're on mute.
Sorry, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah, okay. As an SSC, yes, I would like to have more. I don't want to have any limits, but I don't think that's a practical, wish. Right? It's just a, pipe dream. But the government is also right from its perspective that, there has to be some kind of a time limit. So typically what happens is that many of these invoices that don't get accounted and therefore get missed out on claiming ITC, they typically come to light when you are doing, you're closing your books for the year and doing a detailed reconciliation. And during that period, you figure out that there are so many invoices that the supplier has not raised or is not put it in the GSTR one. So by the time you close the books, it's 2 to 3 months from the financial year end, and you have another 3 months to follow up with the supplier and get them to correct those errors. So that leaves us hardly any time. So because the current deadline is September. So maybe it's a good idea to provide 3 more months. There's a total time of about 9 months for the SSE to do a detailed reconciliation, give him time to follow up with his vendors, make them to file those returns, and then claim input credit. So if a deadline is given till December of the next financial year, I think that seems to me like a reasonable time period for any SSE to claim credit. Having said that, there are also occasions where I may withhold a part of the invoice towards, let's say, for some kind of a retention money. So especially it happens in large civil contracts where the contractor builds the structure and 5 to 10% of the total contract amount is held for 2 to 3 years to see if there is any problem with the quality of construction, which you can figure out after you've gone through a couple of years of usage of the building. So in those cases, government can give an exception of where the retention money is involved, a longer period of 3 to 5 years for anybody to take the input credit. I think if these two concessions are given, I think it will be a balanced view from both sides. It will give reasonable time for the SSEs to claim credit. At the same time, government also is working with a fixed time frame for the SSEs to take claim input credit.
Subhi, I would also
Okay, just
like
add.
to add something here, what Mr. Sadashiv was explaining. So one is that they increase the time limit, but I think some practical situations what we are facing, because, and especially this was during the initial years, that you have taken credit in one state, whereas actually you should have taken credit in some other state because there was a place of supply issue or there was a GST issue, etc. In that case, what happens is that you ultimately end up reversing in the state where you were not supposed to take, and then you are not able to take in the state where it actually pertained to because you have lapsed the time limit, which is where there's a double loss happening to the assessee because of this time limit, etc. So probably that is, there might be some situation like what Mr. Sadanand highlighted, like part payment, etc., where government should come up with some sort of a clarification that these are not the situations where this time limit should apply, because I had taken the credit, but probably I booked it under a wrong GST, and I should not be penalized twice, one by losing the credit in the legitimate state, and then another by reversing the credit in the state where I took it by mistake. So just a thought to share with the group that probably those are the instances where government may come up with some sort of a clarification.
Actually, I would just add one more point over here because this is again another practical problem which is being faced by every taxpayer right now. So, government have introduced this rule 36(4), and what we have seen, like people have not claimed ITC because since it was not part of their 2A, and supplier actually has not filed this return till the time period before, like September ka due date. And now, since they have not claimed ITC, the reason was that their supplier has not uploaded the document. But when they have actually uploaded, like after the due date was gone, and let's say they have uploaded in the while like in the month of November, they have actually filed the return. So now they have even uploaded, still like we were not able to claim ITC because the time limit is already lapsed. Earlier we were facing problem because we can't claim ITC because of this rule 36(4), and now we are facing the problem because of this condition which is kept in section 16. So that is also one of the practical problem which is actually faced by everyone. So they are like, okay, just because I'm like into mid of these two conditions and I'm just suffering, I'm not able to claim my ITC. So maybe with this, I would like to ask something from Rahul ji. So Rahul ji, we have understood in the budget, the government have removed this GST audit, where this CAs or cost accountant, they don't have to certify the reconciliation statement. So what do you think about this change? Will this actually be helpful, or this is going to make a more problem for the government?
Yeah, from the perspective of the large company is concerned, because we, ourselves have our system and process in control. So there, I don't feel that much of a concern which is there from the government side, because, audit ultimately just become a verification of something which is already in order. But for the industry in large, as we are seeing, in terms of reconciliation issues, and people are not even, able to, do the compliance rightly in terms of monthly compliance. Leaving that annual compliance entirely onto the industry is going to be a big mistake, because the chartered accountant fraternity or the audit fraternity, they would be able to contribute a lot in terms of getting the audit done and advising the taxpayer, and making sure that they are not harassed later on, by the revenue authorities, when they are, they could be well advised by their auditor, and kind of they could do their compliance even after a lapse of time by paying whatever interest and penalty which will be due till the time of audit is done. I feel that is somewhere where the government is trying to catch up because of the whole thing, and people, they don't want to extend the dates, and they are further exposing the people in terms of taking the law in their own hand and try to go ahead and take another bet on their filing. So I feel it's going to be risky for the government, and more the risky for the small players in the industry, because if they are devoid of that support of the professionals, so they won't be able to do the compliance, and they're at more risk, I feel. Yeah, Rajiv ji.
Thank you, Rahul ji. Yeah, Rajiv
Yeah.
ji.
Subscribe to the view as put by Rahul ji. My personal experience is when I was filing return for 2017-18, it was audited by the CA, and he put out few problems, mistakes which you're making, and we made sure that we don't make those mistakes again in future. So it becomes a learning curve, and the whole thing is a learning cycle of GST. So this audit thing helps in a big way, because if you are making a mistake, you are going to pay for it sometime or the other. So it's better to pay it now, learn it, and don't make that mistake again. So this 9C thing should be continued. I somehow don't reason why, because that reconsideration thing now has fallen on us. And if we are making a mistake, we'll continue to make those mistakes. And in any case, if we are very careful, we'll go back to the auditor only, ask him to do the reconsideration statement for us. So if he is doing it under own signature, he's more careful and becomes a learning curve for us. So I absolutely subscribe to the view of Mr. Rahul that should be continued. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajivji. So Rajivji, just adding to like this, so we also understand this MSME when we just talk about them. So they just like focus less on maintaining books of accounts and like maintaining all the records. So do you think like especially this rules, the new ITC rules and all, like what precautions or documents should they maintain so that they can not end up like blocking their ITC or maybe blocking their working capital and having like less profit and just end up by cancellation of their business altogether?
You see, one thing is very clear, that they have made changes to the law and 2B is sacrosanct. Now, how do you carry on with those draconian laws of 2B? You are not left with any other option. Now, how do you reconcile? I am seeing my own experience. We are a small unit, and we've come to realize that this thing has to be done month by month. We have no option. So what we are doing is we are seeing all the invoices which we have received material, and what we have not received material, we just leave it as receivables. We don't, when we are maintaining two, in account of books, we have opened the account called GST receivable. And then when we avail the GST, we debit that GST receivable and say we had 10 lakhs credit available, 10 lakhs ITC, and we availed 8 lakhs. That 2 lakh is receivable, which we are going to take in the next month or whenever the GST or 2B is contains those invoices. Now that 2 lakh has a clear number of invoices we reconcile. So that 2 lakh, if it is available as GST receivable, we show that figures out in the invoices which are not shown by the suppliers. So this is what we are doing it, and I somehow feel that we have been quite successful in holding it pretty well. In fact, I was talking to my CA only today. We were filing the annual return. Last date is just a day away, and this is what he also suggested, that just carry on like this. So I'd advise small industries to make sure that they have to be very careful about what invoices are shown and only take credit of those. We aren't even going by 5%, 10%, because then you keep rolling in that 5%, 10% thing and not knowing whether you've done the right thing or not in the past. So what we are following is typically go by 2B, take credit of only those which have come, though it's a burden on us, but then compliance is there. So we have no problem. And this is what we would suggest to people for compliance as far as the new ITC rules are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajivji. And I think, yes, that is what most of the businesses have started with. Rather than just claiming extra portion and then tracking the invoices, tracking the documents, they're like, better just go with 2B and claim it, and maybe then ask your vendors to upload the documents so that it can come into the next 2B. So with this, maybe I would ask Shinoyji. So Shinoyji, when we just talk about our pre-GST era, where there were certain states who have followed the turnover-based taxation. So in this system, what they used to do, they used to just pay some small percentage of the taxes on this turnover, and we have something like this, which is known as composition scheme, but still there are certain restrictions and there are certain conditions on this. So what do you think? Should that limit be increased, or should we actually bring this again, this something like composition dealer in this GST also, so that it can ease the burden of the smaller taxpayers? Shinoji, you are on mute.
There is a concept of composition dealer even in GST. If your turnover is below 1.5 crores, there was a talk of increasing this limit, but I think currently it's 1.5 crores, and you have the option of paying a flat tax of 2% or 1%, depending on whether you are a manufacturer or a trader, without availing any input credit. Something similar is also applicable for the restaurants, where you need to pay 5% of tax on your output without availing input credit. So, to my mind, I think that provides a very clear way out for those small entities who do not want to go through the rigor of input credit matching, following up with the suppliers, etc. I think my advice would for those organizations would be to opt for the composition, pay the differential 2% or 1%, and be done with it. But perhaps the limit needs to be revised. 1.5 crore that is currently there, I believe, is rather inadequate. Given the current levels of levels of business and having a regard to what constitutes a truly a small organization, maybe a limit of 5 crores in the current day and time would be more practical. So if you have a business up to 5 crores, you can opt for composition. Above that, I mean, you are considered reasonably large enough to to be able to comply with the provisions of a full scale GST compliance. So that is what my recommendation would be: increase the limit and stay with the composition scheme.
Like adding to this, because we also understand when it comes to composition scheme today. So if they are dealing with this e-commerce platform, then they cannot offer this composition scheme. And now when we look into COVID, especially during the COVID like era, people have now started moving online. So do you again think that restrictions should also be removed while they are opting for the composition?
Yeah, I think it will be better if government makes the composition scheme available to everyone without any restriction. The only criteria should be the maximum turnover that is permitted. I think that would make life much simpler.
Thank you, Shivaji. I think this will actually help if this actually comes and becomes true. So this will at least help the MSME and the small GST taxpayer, so that they don't have to go with like reconciling and then claiming ITC, making sure their supplier approves and all. So they can get rid of all of such problems. So with this, maybe PPG, I would like to understand from because now when we just talk about the taxpayer who has reported the supplies in GST1, but they have made certain mistake while they were filing 3B, and sometimes they have misreported, sometimes they have not paid it correctly, and there was certain mismatch. And sometimes they have done certain, or maybe sometimes in fact this also happened like something was wrongly shown in GST1 and they have not done the amendment, due to which when we look into the 1 and 3B, usually in 3B the liability shown as underpaid, but in this case now the GST officers, they have the power to cancel this GST registration. So what is your opinion on this? Should they actually cancel the registration? Because if they do that, their business can be interrupted. They won't be able to generate iron if let's say invoice is applicable, or they won't be able to generate e-way bill, which is something like creating problem into their normal business routine. So what is your opinion on this?
So, Subhi, I think definitely this rule is quite stringent, where this non-compliance would lead to cancellation of registration for the taxpayer. And this can impact the supply chain for the industry, because if my vendor ultimately gets into this problem, his registration gets surrendered, my supplies are impacted. Similarly, if my customer, because of some reason, his registration is suspended, I may get into a problem. So definitely it's a matter of concern for the industry. But if you look at why this provision was brought in, I think the key objective was again to curtail the fraudulent business practices and wrongful availment of input tax credit. Because what was practically happening, people were reporting transaction in GSTR1, which gets reflected in 2A, and you are able to take the credit. But because these transactions are not reflected in 3B, government practically never collected tax on those transactions. Another problem which was there from an industry perspective, you have a condition in section 16 which says you can take input tax credit only when your supplier has paid tax. Now you don't see any visibility of his 3B. What you can see is maximum what is coming in your 2A, which means what he has uploaded in GSTR1. Now you can't go back and check whether he has paid tax or not. And practically, if this is happening that he is not reporting those transactions in 3B, then my credit is at risk, which I will come to know at a later point of time, and then there would be intrusive penal consequences. So definitely there was a matter of concern for the industry also. So now by bringing this provision, and in fact, if you see there's another provision which they brought in, that if you not file GSTR1 for 2 months, then your e-way bill facility also would be blocked. So all these provisions, I think they are basically aimed at ensuring that people do file their 3B and GSTR1 both, so that the credit chain is not impacted. Though it may impact genuine taxpayers also, because there may be some genuine clerical errors, there might be some transaction which has got misreported, or you missed that while reporting 3B, etc. But I feel what is needed is that department exercises power cautiously, because as per the rule, they have to first issue you a show cause notice, then you will have to explain the reason for that variance. And if you have a justification for that variance, because it was a clerical miss or the transaction was wrongly reported in GSTR 1 or 3B, and if you can explain, logically your registration should not be suspended. And the provision itself says when there are very high significant variances between GSTR 1 and 3B. I just hope that the officers use this power cautiously, and if this is used in the right sense and direction, probably that will be in the interest of the industry, because then effectively you are sure that the transactions on which you have taken credit, somebody has paid tax on those transactions.
Thank you, Preeti.
I just want to, I just want to add a point here. I think, many times what happens is these differences happen because the supplier has not, input his invoices, etc., leading to these kind of differences, and therefore, and cancellation of registration is an extreme step. I mean, it needs to be resorted to only as an absolute last resort, and therefore this power should be exercised by the government only at a very senior level. I mean, you cannot leave it to the assessing officer or assistant commissioner or those levels. My recommendation is any issue involving cancellation of registration should be taken at least at a commissioner level or above, so that there is adequate caution that is exercised by the government, and the junior level officer should be able to explain why they want to cancel this. So that's and it can be done, even without a personal hearing and all that stuff. So it's very important that this power is exercised very, very judiciously and very
I think that's
sparingly.
a very important point, that there should be a proper discipline and the judicial and a hierarchy whereby this power can be exercised. Because as Mr. Shivanand is mentioning, if this is left to the lowest level of officers, we don't know how many such show cause notices we'll be receiving on month basis. Though you may go and explain, but practically it would cause a lot of challenges for the industry. So some sort of discipline and guideline should be there, that with whose approval and in which all conditions this power should be exercised by the authorities.
I guess we totally agree with this, and in fact, practically we ourselves have seen this problem, where this officer has just cancelled the GST registration, and the client, he was not able to generate the IRN number, and his like goods were also, because he was not able to even generate e-way bill, so his goods was lying there, and he was like, okay, my GST is cancelled, what to do next? And the other problem he faced was he had his own customer, which was a big company, and they say, okay, government have cancelled your registration number, so we're not going to deal with you. So that was like another problem they faced. And just because like a small cancellation, it was a small mismatch, and it was not even a bigger thing, that they have already paid that using DRC 03, the mismatch part, but still the officer has just cancelled the registration. So this small thing sometimes can create a bigger problem to the businesses. So that is what we always, the government especially, they have to look into it, and this authority should only be given to the higher people or higher officers. So I would say with this, I would like to thank everyone for their like kind words, and in fact explaining and running through all of our participants again, like different provisions which are there, what are the implications, what are good part, and what are like intention also, and something where the government can improve on. So I would say thank you everyone. So thank you Shanarji, thank you Preeti ji, thank you Rajiv ji, and thanks everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Surbi, for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Surbi. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone. We are just going to start our next session in like 2 minutes.
Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. So now it's the time to move on to the next panel discussion. It's redefining compliances in 2021 and beyond. And basically, we would be covering recent changes in GST compliance and return filing. What does the QRMP scheme offer MSMEs and the way forward? The invoicing impact on small and large taxpayers. And we have with us for this panel discussion, Mr. Rajesh Shukla. He's a qualified cost accountant having more than 27 years of post-qualification experience in finance and taxation. He's currently heading the indirect tax function of Tata Motors and has worked in reputed Indian business houses and MNCs, General Motors, Skoda Auto, Johnson and Johnson, Boros Welcome, Wipro Limited, etc. In his current role, he is responsible for providing thought leadership to indirect tax team, framing of policies, advising management in decision making for business models, liaison with tax and government officers for various matters, including fiscal incentives, setting up controls to ensure compliance, training, and coaching the team. Welcome, sir. Um, Second panelist for this discussion is Mr. Kanaiya Panchal. He is a chartered accountant and lawyer and IIM alumni. He has post-qualification experience of 2 decades in tax compliance and litigation. Mostly worked in BFSI industry. Welcome, sir, to the webinar and looking forward to hear you. Third panelist for this panel discussion is Mr. Sundeep Gupta. He's partner, accounting and business support, indirect tax, ASA and associates. Mr. Gupta heads the accounting and business support and indirect tax vertical in Delhi, NCR locations of ASA and Associates LLP. He has more than 25 years of diverse experience in industry and profession with expertise in regulatory compliances, indirect taxes, treasury management, cross-border merger and acquisitions, amongst other. He has also worked with PwC and ITC Limited in the early stages of his career. And so welcome, sir, to the panel discussion today on this very important topic. I now hand over to Surbhi to take forward the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ira.
So, first of all, welcome to our panelists. And as we all understand that in this session, second session, we are going to actually understand about e-invoicing and also the problems being faced in respect of e-invoicing, and also certain things about QRMP scheme and the ITC problem which are faced by people. So we'll just start our session with Sandeep ji. So Sandeep ji, we all understand that there was a recent budget, and in the recent budget, they have mandated the appearance of transaction in 2A or 2B. It's a mandatory condition now. So what is your view on the same?
Yeah, thank you, Surbhi. This was expected, if I may say so. See, the genesis of this lies since the latter part of 2020 when the government was facing a cash crunch. And probably some wizard there thought that the credit restriction may be permitted up to 20% to begin with. So from October, I think 10th of October was the date, they brought in a notification restricting the unmatched credit to 20%. And when the collection suddenly jumped up in that particular month, the government was extremely, enthusiastic about it. And they, from the next month onward, they reduced it to 10%. 1st of January 2021, it was reduced to 5%. And with the onset of the budget, within a very short time, I think the reduction of 5% was in 22nd of December. The notification came out, and 1st of February they said, "Sorry, nothing doing. If it is only matched, you will get the credit." Now, if you look at how things have been panning out, this was one of the most ambitious moves of the government while bringing in GST. As has already been discussed in the first session, there was a concept of GSTR 1, 2, and 3 when GST was envisaged. But for certain reasons, the GSTN could not build in that technology and that feasibility on day one. So the government had no option but to defer it. While the provisions of law did not get changed, the restrictions started coming in subsequently. On to the topic as to what is this going to lead to. Now, certainly it is going to be the biggest challenge for not only the larger enterprises but for smaller enterprises as well, because what will happen if my supplier is non-compliant, then because of his non-compliance I would be either bearing a brunt or I would be running around him to make him compliant, or the third most obvious recourse will happen that the entire ecosystem is going to gravitate towards the more compliant vendors. And that, I think, is something very, very unfortunate, which could probably happen to the MSME sector, because while they have honesty certainly at the back of their mind, they don't, I mean, I would say the basic principle of treating a person as honest unless he is proven dishonest must continue. So they will have their difficulties, they will have their challenges, and on top of that, their cost of compliance is going to be very high on month-to-month basis. So I think it is a bit unfortunate that the government has started to bring it at this juncture in life, but the challenges would certainly be enough and more which will happen. Also, please understand, and it's very important point which was asked probably to understand in this budget, and it was part of the discussion in the previous panel also, the absolute power of suspension which has been taken in without even giving an opportunity of hearing to the taxpayer is something which is extremely wide. And if not used judiciously, this is going to create a ruckus across the tax administration. And because of this, what will happen? Again, the customers are going to suffer for any kind of a suo moto suspension by the relevant GST authority on my vendor. And all these are going to create challenges in the business ecosystem, which are not wanted in today's time. See, we have just trying to come out of COVID difficulties. Our economy all is on the uptick. I think the government should be more considerate on those aspects. That is, I would say, the government must have a relook in terms of understanding what is the cost benefit of such a stringent restriction at this stage in life.
Thank you, Sandeep ji. And I think adding to this point, and we all understand till now we are discussing about ITC, and putting this condition is actually making the business like lot of problem. So it's like they are just asking them to reconcile every time, like whenever they are filing their CVs and asking the vendors to do the compliance and all. But just adding to this, maybe Rajesh ji, if you can also give your opinion on this. Government have just come up with this QRMP scheme, which is for the small taxpayer to ease their life. So just to ease their compliance and asking them to file this GST 1 and 3B both on quarterly basis. Also, they just said, okay, you can make the payment on monthly basis, but again, they're giving the facility that you can just directly make the payment, which is 35% of the cash payment which you have done in the last quarter, or maybe 100% the last month. So that is the facility being given by the government to this taxpayer whose turnover is up to 5 crore. Now, coming to this, since they have also introduced this IFF, where they are saying this is the invoice furnishing facility, though you are filing your return on quarterly basis, but you can still go ahead and upload the document on the monthly basis. So, what is your opinion? Will this actually ease this small taxpayer life, or this is actually going to complicate either this taxpayer, the small taxpayer life, or maybe the bigger companies who are actually filing the monthly return for claiming the ITC? So, what is your opinion on this?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank Vicky as well as ClearTax for inviting me on this session. And if you permit me, I would like to add my views to earlier answer given by Mr. Gupta and the rationale why this 16(2) AA has been introduced. So I think there are some cases where government was not having support of law because 36(4) was introduced as a rule. So I think to take care of that, they have brought this change. Of course, this is going to have bigger issues, and we have some comments on that. So I will develop on that appropriately at appropriate time when we reach to that stage of our discussion. Now, coming back to your question, whether this uploading of invoice is making life easy of the small taxpayer. I think we need to understand the rationale. Unless we understand rationale, we will not be able to give justice to that change. And I to a small taxpayer traders who are mainly in B2C space, because for them the number of transaction will be more and there is no revenue implication as far as their buyer is concerned. So I think we should take up this as a facilitation for them. Operating in B2B, naturally your client will expect or your the invoices. Otherwise, as earlier speaker has said, they will be out of business. Also we discussed, if they are not reporting their invoices, they will not get business. So I think for B2B, it will continue, and very soon, we are going to have further expansion of this 50 turnover of e-invoicing. Currently, it is restricted up to 100 crore. There is a discussion that it will go up to 50 crore. No notification has come so far, and in due course, it will go to all B2B transactions. So if it is expanding to all B2B transaction, automatically invoice will be generated. It will be reported on GSTN. It will reflect in. I think I don't see it as a additional burden on the B2B player. For B2C player, I think it is a good step, and we must support this or welcome this step. I think your mic, you are on mute.
So thank you, Rajesh, for adding this point. And I think, yeah, when it comes to the B2C market, especially, so this QRMP scheme will actually ease their compliance because then they just have to do this filing on quarterly basis. though payment they are doing on monthly basis, but there also the government have given the facility of this making just 35% of the cash liability which you have done in the last quarter, so they don't have to face or they don't have to worry about it. But still, when it comes to B2B, there could be certain problem they might face, because they have to then upload documents on monthly basis, and then again they have to make sure the same documents they are not uploading while they're filing GST1. So that is, though there will be certain validation on the government portal, but still they have to make sure that this has been taken care by. So that would be like a conclusion if we talk about. So this is good, but as well as this could be problem for some of the users. So with this, maybe I would like to understand from Kanaya ji. So regarding, we all understand this e-invoicing. This is going to be applicable from 1st April 2020. We all understand from 1st April 2021, government may come up with e-invoicing for everyone, or maybe with certain turnover limit that they may say, okay, up to or above 50 crore people have to start doing this e-invoicing. So what is your opinion on this? Whether this MSMEs and all, or maybe SME basis what they actually come up with, will they be ready by this 1st April 2021?
I thank you, Vicky and ClearTax, for giving me this opportunity. Yeah, first, the part on the readiness and whether it will be applicable to all. So, if we go back to the government tweets in the past, initially it was being stated 5 crore and above, but the recent sandbox testing has been opened only for the people who are having 50 crore and above turnover. So, looking at this, possibly from 1st of April, maybe 50%, 50 crore and above turnover people might get mandatory, and maybe another 3 months down the line, maybe from July, they may extend to even reduce the turnover limit and gradually then extend to every B2B supplies. And from preparedness perspective, I would say the MSMEs have been on the other side as a receiver of the goods, have been receiving e-invoices. So at least they are already in the scheme of the game of the e-invoice. So from that perspective, they should not be having any per se fear from implementation perspective, but definitely there will be increase in cost for them. They might have to engage GSP, ASP like ClearTax, or go with some kind of softwares like Tele to start with, or to be compliant with the GST e-invoice issuing. And particularly other way around also, it's good for them from the overall scheme perspective. That means both the sides, their supply is also available, and from whatever they have purchased, their invoices are also available on the matching perspective. So it should be good for the MSME at least, and be ready today or tomorrow perspective. Yeah.
Thank you, Kanaya. So just adding
So,
to this,
Surbi, if you
Rajesh.
allow me, I will add something here. So, I
Yeah,
think we
Rajesh.
must first uh, understand the revolutionary step which is taken by government by e-invoicing, and I think it is a great opportunity for India to demonstrate that we are at par with the progressive countries, and every word, every country or investors are watching. And if we can implement this entire e-invoicing in our ecosystem properly, it will have a great change in the way we do our business. So I see it is not a compliance change, but the change which is going to bring business practices, new business practices. So of course, the current approach of government is go in phase manner, and I think we must welcome this. But one point which we want to make as an industry, that they should give very clear timeline and path, and take consideration of all players who are going to participate, because as all of you and other speakers have said, that MSME will need bigger efforts to come up on this platform, because today they don't have even infrastructure to upload their monthly invoice or quarterly return, monthly return or quarterly return. So it is a big change for them, and we must very cautiously trade on this path. But yes, I think this is the right move, and we must all put together participate in this revolutionary step taken by government.
Nitish. And I think we have also seen some part here. So the government, when they started with this e-invoicing, so when we just checked this 1st October, so that was also when it actually came, we all were thinking maybe government may extend certain dates for this. But they were like, no, we are going to now launch from 1st October, and they have done also. So though they have given like 1 month relaxation in the starting, but they actually launched this e-invoicing for people with turnover more than 500 crore. And then second step they took in like 1st January, where they say, okay, if your turnover is more than 100 crore, then you have to start generating iron. And people are actually started with the iron, though they were very against it. They were like, okay, we are busy with the GST and 9 annual returns. Now there are also income tax filing, so don't have time for this all. But when we look into practically, when unless we give the pressure, they don't start it. They're like, okay, we'll see that whenever it comes, we'll see that. But finally, they have come up with that, and I think okay. So Sandeep ji, you want to say something?
Yeah, just to add on that, the e-invoicing in itself is not the aspect that we should be, trying to overcome. It is also that QR code which is very closely linked to the e-invoicing. So both are going hand in hand together. And see, the bigger companies are in a much better position infrastructurally and financially to take care of these things. But when it starts getting rolled down to maybe 50 crore and above taxpayers, or when it finally boils down to 5 crore and above taxpayers, then I think the government will probably need to provide better systems and more simple solutions which can be taken on in a very cost effective manner by the MSMEs. Otherwise, it would be an unnecessary and a very heavy burden on them.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. And in fact, I will just like add on this. Like ClearTax also, we have like a e-invoicing software. We are working as an ASP. In fact, we are also launching one mobile app, because sometimes people are like very small and they're like, okay, I can't do all of this thing, but at least I have the phone, so I can just generate invoice there itself and can get the item number. So we are coming up with a mobile app too, so that it will ease their life. Ki, okay, I don't have to worry about the compliance part. I just have to focus on my business, so they can do that. And yeah, yeah, Sandeep ji.
See, what you're saying is very, very correct, but the government also has to be equally responsive to a very important aspect, that we are all humans and we are prone to making mistakes. Now, in this entire e-invoicing, if you look at it, there is no process for amendment or rectification. So if you have generated an invoice and there is some error in it, whether you call it a clerical error or whatever, and you have also generated a linked e-way bill, then you have no option but to carry on with that, because nothing can be cancelled then. Now, government should look at the grassroots reality that mistakes do happen, boss. I mean, you need to provide a platform and a system to the taxpayer where any kind of an error made, there should be a window wherein the rectification must be made possible. There should not be such a great dependency on the two systems of e-way bill and e-invoice that once they are generated, they cannot be rectified. Cancellation has its own challenges. If I may just share an example of one of the cases which came to us, they had wrongly added a zero in the case of an e-invoice. The e-way bill also was generated, the truck was on the move, and 50 kilometers down the line somebody detected and the truck was stopped. Now you don't have a facility to cancel the e-way bill, you don't have a facility to rectify, and what do you do now? So these are practical challenges. There is no dishonest intent behind it. But what is the government thinking on those lines? I think it's very, very important to put forward. Maybe through FICCI and ClearTax as a joint platform, some kind of representations must go.
No, Sudeep ji, I have different view. So definitely we should collect the genuine problems of all kind of taxpayer, big, small, medium, and give it to government. But we cannot carry on the business and go back to government on the issues which are in our control. Because if we see the system architecture of IRN, they have given us 24 hours to cancel the invoice if there is a problem or mistake. So if you avail that facility, I think that should take care of the situation. If it is beyond 24 hours, of course, you have to issue credit note and nullify that transaction. So I think we need to be also sensible when we make a representation to government. There has to be some real practical solution, because when we give any suggestion, they have to get it validated at their end, and then only they will accept it.
No, sure, that's fine. What my suggestion was basically that some amendment or rectification facility, if it is possible to provide, the government could look into it.
It is a unique number. No, unique IRN number is generated. Everything is validated, so you cannot cancel that unique IRN number. It has to be used, consumed. It is done. Anyway, this is my thought. We can go back to government GST and get some facility. I am not against that.
I think see, whenever we talk about the intention, we are very clear. So intention is obviously very good about like here. They just want to make everything online. They want like everything should be white. So that was the main. And in fact, yesterday also we have seen that the government have signed MOU between MCA and the GST side like CBIC and all. So we could see intention is right, but sometime we also have to look into the practical challenges because today, in fact, I am like belonging to Uttarakhand and I am in the tier 2 city. In fact, practically, if you ask me, if I just ask my father, okay, just go online, why don't you generate like an invoice online? Why are you still using that manual copy? So we're like, sorry, but I can't use. I have that habit and I just can generate using this and I can't go online. I don't even understand this laptop and all. I can't even open the laptop. So this has some practical problem, and then they have to take the help from the other person, which is maybe an accountant coming to their office and then making or doing some work for them. So there are problem, and sometimes it again since they also have to look into they are now senior, so sometimes it takes time for them also to understand each and everything. So sometimes we have to think on that perspective also, like what are the practical challenges especially in the small cities. Yeah, we understand when it comes to bigger company, they know, they understand technology also is easy for them to implement. But when it comes to small users and small taxpayer, we have to give some time, we have to train them, there should be proper training, and it should not be like, okay, today I'm coming and we are going to implement this. So just for example, we are getting the news every time like, okay, now from 1st April, government is going to launch this e-invoicing if your turnover is more than 50 lakhs. But today we are already on 26th of Feb and there is no notification for this. Now they will be like, okay, you are just giving, even if the notification come on, let's say 1st March, so you're just giving 1 month time for them to do everything. So they also need some time. So it's just like, yeah, we understand government intention, they are right, we are not even against it, but it's just like we also need time when it comes to any changes you are bringing in. So maybe with this, I can just go maybe ask Rajeshi because you also talked about e-invoicing.
Let us make some value government.
Sorry, I think Rajeshi.
Yeah, continue.
Okay. So yeah, so Rajeshi, because you just talked about the clear intention, which is very right. So I would just like to understand about your views on the recent change which government have come up with in the budget, which was about removing the certificate from a CA or an ICAI or like ICWI, and just asking for the self certification. So what is your view on this?
Yeah. So before giving opinion on that, so you have made very valid point. We should say government that after issue of notification, give us 1 month, 2 months, whatever period we want. We cannot go with the date first and then we wait for the notification and we get that within 2 weeks or 1 week time. So yes, we should represent, and it is the time to represent that. I think this question, what you have asked me, has been already discussed in previous session, but let me give answer from my point of view. So in this budget, government has tried to make a lot of announcement where they want to focus on making India, plugging loopholes of revenue leakage, ease of doing business. And one of that ease of doing business is this waiver of certification by the third party independent chartered or accountant or cost accountant. So they may be having that as one of their key point of ease of doing business. But I have a different view. I think it is not a big relief. They have just shifted the more ownership as an industry, as us bear that and take this burden on us. So in big corporates, we definitely feel that company management will continue to get certification done by independent auditor, though it is not mandatory, because in cost audit also many industries are not covered under cost audit, but people are doing it. So this will be one of the area which I think big corporates will go. And for MSME, I think we have discussed in previous occasion that in fact they are more vulnerable to mistakes because they don't have subject matter expert in their company. They don't have skilled resources there. So I would definitely advise that they should go on to restrict the interest and penalty burden, because I think earlier speaker has said that mistake has happened. If it is better, we note it now and learn from it and keep controls on that. So in my view, there is no relief of this waiver, and we must continue getting the certification done, though it is not mandatory. This is what we feel as an industry.
Thank you, Rajesh. And I think, yeah, so what I could see practically, because again, there could be two different views again. Sometimes we feel, yeah, this is good, like, because then, especially when it comes to SME, though they make like lot of mistakes, but sometimes they just go to tax practitioner and they say, okay, I'm doing certification also, and it's my responsibility, and there's too much responsibility on the tax practitioner. So they are also very much like, should I actually sign when I know there's a problem? So most of the time they try to just get rectified in GST 9 itself. So they try, okay, just make, or I know that these are the error, just correct the entire thing. In fact, they only file their GST 9 also, and make sure like everything is correct. And then only go to the 9C part
So,
where,
so our view is that I think the professionals have only requested to remove this mandatory certification. They will get anyway fees paid. So now they don't want to take responsibility. On lighter note.
exactly.
Sir, I can
And
assure you the ICAI is not done it. It is not on our recommendation.
It's okay. It's okay.
yeah, but yeah, on the lighter note, yeah, I can agree. Ki, at least the responsibility will go away from this practitioners like CAs and also, because they are more worried. Okay, now it's my responsibility. I have to make sure like whatever I'm signing is correct. So that
Yeah,
part it is good, but at the same time they can anyhow just file 9, because anyhow they will go to CA or maybe tax practitioner for getting
absolutely,
their 9
absolutely.
9C file.
So practitioners should not be worried about their business. That's what I want to say here.
Okay, so with this, maybe Kanhaiya ji, I would like to understand from you regarding this e-invoicing. So we understand this e-invoicing initiative is more than a change in the way of raising invoicing. It also changed the way of communication and data transfer between suppliers, recipient, and government. So according to you, how these changes have impacted the small taxpayer in terms of day-to-day business and the GST return filing? So we have covered most of the part here. We have covered about like how it actually have impacted small business. But I would like to understand from you how it's actually solving for maybe the GST filing, and will it actually ease the business, or in future will it actually make the user's life very easy?
Okay, so I'll cover from 2021 perspective and probably a vision perspective. So first, there will definitely be a certainty to MSME since both the sides, their supply side, their receipt sides, everything is synchronized. So then in that scenario, they are not worried about from the future when the government comes for the audit, or earlier under excise regime or service tax regime, every 5 years they used to come for audit. And even if you have disclosed all the information, but they'll say you have done fraud. All the 5 years, SCN are being issued. And you wait for another 10 years to get it resolved. So over here, since everything is being monitored day in, day out with each filing, so at least you have clear certainty. Your informations are being properly validated. That's the uncertainty part. Then on ease part, when earlier regime I has to file return, possibly or I have to communicate anything, I need to have somebody to go to office and do the stamping and get the acknowledgement. But with the GSTN, at least that's another good part at any given point of time, even in the night at the 10:30 or 11:30, when a businessman has seen his information, at the last moment also he can file his return without any worry. That means I will be non-compliant. Even by midnight he can file, and even with the improved version of GST, and at least the initial phases which you used to have about the non-availability of systems, at least that has gone. So even maximum people are filing at the last moment, and people are able to sign in without any hurdles. So that is the ease part which has brought in. But simultaneously, there is a negative side also which has come in. There is a, with so many raids which are being conducted and the fear psychosis which has been got created among this honest taxpayer or people who are on the borderline cases, the fear psychosis has really created amongst the people, and even high courts have not appreciated the way in which officers are conducting their activity. So that's a negative side of the same story. And that, if I look at this, is from the 2021 perspective. But if we look at it, the bigger picture and the long term vision, maybe 5 years or 10 years down the line, the real question or the real challenge which is getting addressed is the trust issue. Government have trust on taxpayer, or does taxpayer have a trust on the government? So that issue is getting resolved, and with the invent of technology and like ClearTax and any other IT platforms which are coming in, and still RBI is evaluating bringing in e-currency into the entire ball game. So with that, maybe when a government implements blockchain, then in that scenario, this entire trust issue and the movement of documents, movement of challenge to invoice, receipt of money, all these are complicated steps which are being managed by different intermediaries. Raising of invoice, even government has created e-invoice portal. For filing, government is having GSTN. Now receiving that money, I have a bank. Then I have a third party like UPI for receiving my money. Then again, I need a consultant to validate all the informations. Then at the month end, I need another consultant to validate the information. Uh, then again, I need a third person to check my invoice credits. So all that are part and parcel of the entire financial ecosystem. And if maybe not immediately, but the vision statement perspective, maybe 5 year, 10 year long, when e-currency is there, government is able to bring in the complete platform or ecosystem with the blockchain. Possibly all these compliance issues or all these nitty-gritties issues which are being talked about in the long run will get streamlined, or possibly we'll have a solution, and possibly India will become a benchmark for the other countries who have not been able to implement the invoice level reporting to the government. And with that, even the statistics which government is having, that also gets clearly addressed. Right now, even the budgeting is being done. There are n number of estimates are being done. And then finally, there's a challenge with respect to the final data which is available on fake invoice, black money, corruption. All that can be with this simple steps of e-invoice. And the second step which RBI will be taking on e-currency will address the entire ecosystems from the overall perspective. But that's a vision statement or a long-term statement which I'm making. Yeah, over to you.
I think Rajesh, you want
So
to add?
Surbi, if you allow me to add on Kanayyaji's statement. So I will make two baskets. One, the benefit to government, where Kanayyaji has already said that transparency and the complete information at transaction level, so they cannot allege a separation. But at the same time, I think it is casting more responsibility on us, because now whatever you report, it will be available to all agencies simultaneously, whether it is a bank, whether it is a MCA, whether it is direct tax or indirect tax. So that has to be kept in mind. On industry side, I think complete automation of your processes. And what he said, 5 years, I don't say 5 years, it will happen. If we meet next year on the same time, many people would have been done automation of all their financial transactions, per se. I say from accounts payable, receivable to GST and income tax reconciliation. So because now this TCS, TDS also has come, so everything is happening at transaction level. So I think this e-invoicing is a step. That is why initially I said it is a revolutionary step taken by government, and definitely it is in the interest of the honest taxpayer, and we should support this initiative, and it will make life simple. Definitely in next 1 or 2 years we'll have different processes to deal with our business, and trust factor, not only with government. I think trust factor between the B2B is going to improve, because I can see daily what sales they have reported against my purchase. So this relationship will build up more stronger.
I guess the problem we usually say that I'm not able to claim ITC, which will also get solved if this e-invoicing comes into picture, because then
Yeah.
everything will be real time. So then they don't have to worry about like, okay, my ITC is not coming up.
It's a complete automation. It will happen complete automation. Once B2B, all transactions are covered by e-invoice or IRN number is there, then you can integrate it seamlessly in your system.
So maybe because we just talked about e-invoicing, and we understand like government anyhow is going to bring this mainly for people whose turnover is above 5 crore. As of now, we are not clear if they are going to even bring for people whose turnover is below 5 crore, because looking into what they are doing, and they have launched this QRMP scheme also, and by which we feel that they are not going to do, but still we don't know as of now. With this, Sandeep ji, I would like to understand from you, do you suggest any changes to this recently introduced QRMP scheme so that this compliance burden can be further eased for the small taxpayer?
See, that's a very interesting question. QRMP scheme in itself, I would say, is a very nice scheme to help the easing the burden on the smaller players, which is it's applicable for 5 crores or less of the taxpayers. But probably the government, again, in their enthusiasm, has made it slightly complex with the monthly payment and quarterly return filing, having an option of different kinds of tax payments, whether it is on 35% of the quarter or it is 100% of the previous month for monthly filers till on a certain date. Maybe some kind of a rationalization could be brought in that the MSME would be required to pay taxes on a quarterly basis itself. Ultimately, what we are talking about is all volumes. And now I don't have that kind of a data with me, yes, but probably the government could look at it for those small taxpayers. If the quantum is not very large, why can't they convert even the tax payment on a quarterly basis? That could be one very, very big ease which the government can bring in. Second is, the challenge which has been discussed with respect to the claim of tax credit. Because of the IFF not being the invoice furnishing facility not being used by many of these QRMPs. I mean, of course, we are now in the second month of the first quarter of QRMP itself. We will get to know as we go along. But many players would not be using the IFF facility, and there the tax credit would be held up. So, it will have an impact on the cash flow, the working capital. And as I said, for larger companies where the amounts involved are larger, the entire ecosystem is beginning to graduate towards compliant vendors. So, how does the government envisage to help the MSMEs by easing this kind of a process? I think that should be looked at. Maybe as was envisaged in the original system of GSTR2, a reverse filing is possible. That why don't the government let the customers upload the invoice of the vendor through an IFF itself, which may be sought as a confirmation from the vendor in a subsequent date within a month or the quarter. Those kind of systems could be thought of. The third thing I would like to mention here is that I really do not see any rationale in limiting this IFF facility to 50 lakhs worth of invoices in a particular month. I mean, overall, the limit is 5 crores, we all know. But why does the government want to restrict it to only uploading of 50 lakhs worth of invoices in the IFF is something which I fail to understand. And the problem there is that the taxpayer, which has maybe in one particular month got more than 50 lakhs of invoices, will now need to keep track what has been uploaded in IFF and what will need to be uploaded through GSTR1. It cannot miss out on that particular invoice, especially when the government is mandating that whatever you have done in IFF will not be repeated in GSTR1. So those kind of probably ease of compliances and doing away with reconciliations on this front could be a good idea for the government to look at.
Thank you, Sandeep ji. So Rajesh ji, would you like to add more things?
Yeah, I think Sudeep has made very right and valid point, and we are talking about the condition of 16 to AA and 16 to C read together because it is putting a lot of restriction on and responsibility on me before I avail ITC. So if I get a facility to report the invoices and which is not reported by my supplier and it creates liability at his end, I think that should take care of all these issues. If he doesn't pay, then only my credit should be reversed after 2 months, 3 months. That was the earlier thought process. So it will avoid all our current issues which we are facing, cash flow as well as reconciliation or getting into commercial dispute, because there are issues when he has reported but technically something has gone wrong and it is not come to my 2A or 2B. So all those issues can be taken care by such facilities, and government should be open for such suggestions.
Thank you, Rajesh. And yeah, so I guess we have seen people have started filing the return on quarterly basis, which is they have opted for QRMP. In fact, GST themselves have done this automatically, and the time they come to know, okay, I have been opted for quarterly or monthly, though they have received messages, but they were not aware about what does this exactly mean. So, but the time limit was left and they were not able to change. And finally, when they know, okay, I am now quarterly filer, I have to file 1 and 3B on quarterly basis. So, some people, in fact, I could see they were relaxed. Okay, now it's quarterly, all right, I can now wait for at least 3 months. I don't have to do anything. But at the same time, they were like, okay, we used to say, okay, but still, you have to make the payment on monthly basis. So you still have to at least make the payment. Otherwise, there would be interest penalty and all. So it was good, and there's Sandeep ji also mentioned that there are certain things we can improve on, like why we have to make payment on monthly. We can also shift that also on a quarterly basis. Anyhow, that will not impact much of the revenue to the government also. And earlier, when there was a VAT system, we have seen that many government, the state government, were asking like this both the payment as well as the return on quarterly basis. So that was there earlier. So if that could be that would be there, then it will actually further ease the small business life. And now, because we have discussed a lot many things, we discussed about e-invoicing, we covered something about QRMP also, and we covered about the ITC part, which is 2A or 2B, or how to deal with that part. So if I just ask like maybe from three of you, like a small pointers or something which you would like to add on, like what do you think when we have already completed this 3 years now, and like in fact 4 years I would say, what was the best part in respect of GST, and what you think would actually be further improvised?
Okay, if I can start with, first of all, compared to what was under old regime and what is the new regime, the compliances for goods people have reduced from if they were to be in multiple states, multiple filing, multiple octroi level, and number of filings were there, particularly, and then physical interactions with the tax offices. That has been streamlined, one nation, one tax. So from that perspective, it's a big move. But from service industry perspective, I would say it's other way around. They used to file half yearly return. Now they have to file monthly. Again, monthly. Most of major service industry player are present in all over India. So they have to file multiply by number of states they are present. Then again multiply by two, bare minimum two returns. So the count runs into thousands. Even for my company, it runs into thousands where I am working. So in that scenario, it's a cumbersome activity. So from future perspective, at least I would say one nation, one tax or one GST, which is being talked about. Ultimately, my portal is same. Only my state level IDs are changing, but my unique ID in between is common PAN number. So why can't my GSTR be one? If I have to file GSTR one, why can't I file one return for PAN India? Let my one extra column be introduced of my supply state, and let that get auto populated in my all the states. That can be one option which can reduce the compliance burden from the long term perspective. From MSME perspective, I would say there's definitely there's increase in compliance cost They have to depend on either GSP, ASP, or highly costly compliance softwares. At least for small players, let there be a few free utility being provided by GSTN, which they can themselves do the basic compliances. That can really help from the that perspective. And the third one, I would say, the simplified. Right now, my UI of GSTN portal is one-way traffic. That means I am filing and everything is in the tab form. Anything I have to just download CSV files or download X, Excel files to do any understanding of the information. Let UI be improved. Let they employ better UI, more MIS kind of information. Let government publish on their portal itself to the users. Secondly, the in the previous session also there was a discussion about the e-invoice. My time limit available is limited with respect to e-way bills. So now since FASTag is available and that FASTag can be linked to the vehicle, and if that is crossing the state borders or when they are crossing the highways, so let that get integrated and that MIS be available with the users. Okay, your e-way bill is reached at this stage. It has crossed this PAN code or sorry PIN code. So at least that proactive information. Right now it's reactive approach. Even possibly the supplier has to monitor or call up the transporter or the truck driver to understand have you been able to deliver in time, or if in between caught then follow the all cumbersome rules of government and then 200% payment if at all if there is some other problem. So that stringent rule which has been brought in into the budget. So from that perspective, proactive information or linking, it's just a thought which I'm parking, Wiki may developed upon with the representation to the government, linking FASTag with the transport vehicle and proactive information. So similar, that's a one example, idea example. There could be similar other idea examples which government proactively can give. Right now, even if I see multiple emails coming from the government side, your this vendor is not filing return for the last 6 months. You are not eligible to for claiming credit. That's a threatening mail which even at a company corporate level we are receiving. So then that information, let that proactive information instead of assessing officer writing Gmail from Gmail ID email to you, your this vendor is not. Let there be a proper communication happen from the GSTN system or a government email ID, right? That is another suggestions or improvement which can government can do. Yeah, over to others.
Rajesh, like,
Should I give my views? I think if I understood the question rightly, I think you are asking what is our experience of last 4 years. Almost now we will complete. It is not 4 years, 3.5 years, and whether we are happy with GST or not. Is it correct question?
yeah, right. Like,
Yeah.
it's not exactly this. Like, I would say, ki, what were the good part which you actually liked about GST, and what are the improvements which we can actually do so that we can further simplify our life.
Yeah. So I think we have too much of expectation from GST. We know we waited for 10 years and we thought that once GST is there, it will solve our problem. It is not going to happen. But if you see in retrospect, I think many of the expectations are fulfilled. Many of the issues are resolved, but many of the issues still remain, and government with open mind and what Kanaya has said, that can consider this, and we can definitely have better life, better compliance. So on policy level, there are many suggestions which we have given to government through FICCI, through CII and other associations, CIAM. And on procedure also, we have given number of suggestions. So I think uh, we cannot blame government for too many changes, because if they don't change, then we blame them that you are not changing. If they change, we blame them they are changing. So we have to accept that it is only 3.5 years. Last 30 years we have handled excise and sales tax and entry tax and OCTRA and LBT. So we need to give some time to government. And I'm with Kanayaji that more and more technology deployment if government can do, like on e-way bill or transportation document, they can allow us. And it was originally planned. If you see the GST law that invoice can be carried in the electronic form in readable document device. So if we take that, we can stop printing the invoices. Thousands of papers can be saved. Automated email or information exchange between buyer, supplier, and giving our own MIS. We should have facility to create our own dashboards in GSTN because they have transaction level information available. Why they don't give us that kind of facility so that I don't have to depend upon any third party and get all those MIS developed for myself. So many things can be done, and I am not pessimistic. I am optimistic person. I have not lost hope. I think given some more period, we'll have a very good taxation and balance of life.
Sandeep, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Surbi. See, the way I look at the situation, GST in a country like India was extremely difficult to put into place, but that happened only because of the drive and the ambition of the government that this has to come in. Having said that, the 3.5 years have not been easy, nor on the government and nor on the taxpayer. I mean, if I may use the words of somebody very senior in the government ministry itself, he had, likened the rollout of GST to sailing a ship while it was being built, and it is even now it is being built while it is in the waters. So, a lot of things have happened, a lot of good things have happened. I would say the single biggest takeaway I would take from it is that the law is now uniform across the country. Unlike even the US today, which has got different laws for different states, India was one of those kind of countries. I think that has been one of the single biggest factors for improving the business ranking for India in the international community. On the There are enough and more, like government has brought out with hundreds and hundreds of notifications and circulars. They run into the book of notifications and circulars is thicker than the book of the law itself. So we can also have enough and more suggestions to the government what to do and what not to do. But I think some of the bigger ones, from a taxpayer perspective, I would recommend is if they can now look at rationalizing the tax slabs, reduce them from 4 to maybe 3, especially the rate of 12 and 18. If they can combine something on that front, that would surely help a lot in the businesses. Second, I would expect the government to now start thinking on the rationalization of the HSNs. There are enough and more classification disputes which keep on happening. I mean, just yesterday I was reading now a dispute is on whether the cheese dip is a dip or is it something else. So there are rate differences. Chocolate, whether it's a chocolate pastry or a chocolate sweet. So the rate of chocolate being 28% and being a sweet, it is less than that. Those kind of things, I think if the government actively looks at and rationalizes the taxability of the various products in line with the international HSN system 2022, I think, which is now into place, I think it can go a long way. But yes, I would also take a point from both Kanhaiya and Rajesh ji that they have said technology is a very, very powerful tool which the government must leverage not only for itself but for the taxpayers also. So the tax administration must be equally prudent of using the technology and the data available to it rather than simply carrying on with age-old practices of asking for paper documents every time a hearing or a scrutiny is happening. Even now when I get the notices for my clients, they ask me for 12 GSTR 3B return copies and GSTR 1 copies. Why? It is completely irrelevant because the data is existing in their own servers, in their own system. So I think the government should also look at using technology in favor of the taxpayer and not only in its own favor. Those would be my thoughts.
I fully support Sandeep, and I think this is the issues which we have given that when you have already yourself have data, why you are asking again and again wasting
Correct.
our time and energy and stationery?
Correct.
Because
Correct.
same figure are going to come out of that. Nothing else is going to come out of those papers
Absolutely.
which are producing before you.
And just to add on here, I think the government must also look at, because of the multiplicity of registrations of one particular company, I have got instances where the state government of of a different registration is asking for the papers and the GST returns of other state registrations. because they say I need to holistically roll it up to your audited balance sheet to see whether my state figures are completely reported or not. Those kind of practical difficulties and challenges would be humongous to deal with in the near future.
Thank you, Sandeep ji. And I would say ki, it was like really very nice session. And so Kanhaiya ji, Sandeep ji, Rajesh ji, so all of you have actually given lot of views. And so we have heard about lot many things. We also could understand about government, like why government is pushing so hard. We also understand what are the actual problem being faced in the like market, or we can talk about in the businesses, like what exactly they are actually facing with. So where government may come up and say, okay, I'm going to solve this, and where we also have to understand, okay, this will take some time, so we should also understand that part. So I would say, I'm like very happy that I was part of this, and I'm like, and especially understanding from you, like what are your views on this different provision by the government, and also like different things which is actually coming up. Like we can see like many changes which are coming up day and night. So we can also see that there may some more changes come in just to ease our life. It's just we have to understand how we can deal with that part. We have to be very ready with it. Okay, this is something which is coming up. Let's understand what was the intention, and then accordingly react with that part. So
Correct.
I would then thank you Kanhaiya ji, thank you
Thank
Sandeep
you.
ji, and thank you
Thank
Rajesh
you.
ji.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks a
you,
lot.
Subi. Thank you, Ira.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. The panelists for the second session, Rajesh Shuklaji, Mr. Kanaiya Panchal, Mr. Sandeep Gupta, and also the panelists for the first session. I would also like to thank them, Mr. Rajiv Agarwal, Preeti Goyal, Sadashiv Shinoy ji, Mr. Rahul Verma. Thank you, everyone, sir. And Vicky and ClearTax, this is a thank you from like both of us. And definitely we'll be engaging soon on further such topics. So we hope to have such continued discussions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.